So tonight we're going to talk about textual sermon. What is textual sermon? Well, this is one of the very popular sermon style preaching in the early 20th century. A lot of preachers love this kind of preaching. It's a kind of in-depth preaching plus Bible study. A lot of preachers who love Bible study in detail will love to preach in textual style. We're going to explain later on the difference between textual and expository. In fact, I think we should talk about expository first and then maybe textual later on, because the format is in the similar way. Let me share with you chapter 9 first. Chapter 9 is about expository. Why I want to compare expository and textual in the same time? Because they're similar in some way. Both of them are in-depth preaching on the topic, not on the topic, on the text of the Bible. Now, last week we learned about topical sermon. And when we talk about topical, we concentrate on just the topic, like love, faith, hope, hell, heaven. And when you concentrate just on the topic, or your division can come from anywhere, but you have a main Bible verse to use, or the main text about, for example, you preach about heaven, and that topic will concentrate on just about heaven. You try to answer what is heaven. Your division just tells heaven is the place that God lives, the place that believer to go one day, and the happy place, whatever about heaven. And the division can come from any Bible passage or not at all. So that we call topical sermon. Now today we talk about expository and textual. I want to explain both in the same time because they have a similar division. Now let's explain expository first. Expository preaching, it just concentrates on a passage that you pick from the Bible. For example, you pick John 3:16. God so loved the world, so he gave his begotten Son, so whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. If you pick John 3:16 and you preach on expository, how you make your sermon, well, you have to decide the topic first. From John 3:16 is about what? God love. God love. It clearly says that God love is clearly in John 3:16. Now you explain from John 3:16 what is the division from that love. Now you see that God loved the world so much. You might put the first division that way. And then he gave his Son. This is how he showed his love. He gave his only Son. So who believe in him shall not perish, but he will give everlasting life. This is God's love. He forgave and he give new life. He sacrificed his Son. This is his love. So now you see that expository or division have to come from the same passage that you select. Cannot come from anywhere else. And this is we call deep study of the Bible. When you preach expository, you preach just the Bible. Exactly that section that you pick. You don't go anywhere else. You can use some illustration, some story from other part of the Bible, but You don't try to explain other part of the Bible. You just try to explain just one section of the Bible that you pick. And this is expository. It's like you make a target and you just concentrate on that target. You don't go anywhere, just in that section. So a lot of preachers today talk about expository sermon because this is the in-depth study of the Bible. You don't go anywhere. You pick a certain part of the Bible and you stay there, explain it, dig very deep in that meaning. So you still try to explain what, for example, what is God love. And if you want to go further, you can explain how God love and who God love. It's still the same thing. You try to answer who, what, where, when, why, how. But sometimes you cannot answer or you just answer a few questions. But the difference from expository and topical is topical, just you concentrate on God love. But the division can come from anywhere that you like. But expository, you have to make your division from the passage that you pick to be the main idea. You don't have freedom to go everywhere else. You have to be here. So you see, your division comes from the passage that you pick. And you have to stay here. The whole sermon just concentrate on this passage. And this is we call expository. You dig very deep on the Greek and Hebrew meaning of the words. You dig down on theology of this section. You dig down deep on application and on history of this section. And this is a lot. You have all the freedom here. You cannot go anywhere. And you see that many famous preachers love this kind of preaching. And they concentrate on this preaching. The name keep go on from the past until today. They still say that this is the preaching that we all preachers need to know how to do it and concentrate on it most of the time. So most of your Sunday, if you preach, you have to be on expository because you try to teach the Bible to the people, the words of God. So this is a deep Bible teaching, deep sermon preparation. So the preacher need to spend a lot of time study the Bible, study the history, the background, the application, the theology of the passage. You cannot just go around and imagine your sermon. This kind of sermon demands a lot of study, hard work, a lot. And you need to have a lot of time to work on to understand your passage very well. And this kind of preaching will concentrate on the words of God only. You respect the words of God and you want the words of God to teach the people and not your own words. So this is expository. Now you look at how to explain the Bible, the words of God. It's all come from the passage itself. You don't have the freedom to make anything up. You just follow what the Bible tells you to teach. So this is, and a lot of people still, you can working on the expository in many ways. A lot of preachers will select the book. Like you pick up John, the Gospel of John, and you start from John chapter 1, verse 1, and go on. And this is most of the preacher will select how to preach expository. It's almost like Bible study, but in depth. But what the difference between Bible study and preaching by expository? Well, the real Bible study will just go easy on the style or on the structure of your teaching. You have a lot more freedom when you just try to teach the Bible. But when you preach from the Bible with expository, you still have the format to follow. So now you have less freedom. The preaching style of expository have a certain way you can do it. So if you want to preach, it still concentrate on a certain point. Even you explain the Bible words, but you still group them together for a goal, for a concentration. So it's a little bit different from teaching. Teaching, you can go everywhere. People can ask questions and you can explain in different way on the passage. But for preaching expository, you still have a goal clear on a certain thing that you want to emphasize. So this is still different. Now they say that there is a lot of advantage on the good thing of expository preaching. And now I explain expository first because a lot of time all the main division is on the same passage. And if you have subdivision, the subdivision still have to come from the same passage. You cannot take somewhere else to be subdivision of expository sermon. It all have to come from the same passage. So now you see the limitation. Expository, you cannot borrow from somewhere else. It's just here, stay here. Exactly, very deep on this passage. And here we have more and more preachers who emphasize that it's important to the preaching from this passage. Okay, now I want you to get the idea of expository. Expository, you build your whole sermon from one passage. All division come from that passage. Even if you have subdivision, you still have to take it from the same passage. That we call expository. You don't go out of the passage that you select. And most of the time, it's just one passage. Like John 3:16, I mentioned just one verse. Or you want to preach about love from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 to 7. What is love? If you preach from expository style, you have to concentrate on just that section. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 to 7 only. And all your division, subdivision, all have to come from 1 Corinthians 13, 4 to 7 only. And this is we call expository. Now you get the idea how expository build on the same passage. And you dig down deep on that passage. And a lot of time you just try to explain what is love. What is love? But you have freedom. Some passage you can tell how to love, or how God love, or who that God love. So it still explain the same similar answer, the same question: who, what, where, when, why, how. Sometimes you answer all, sometimes you answer just one question from your sermon. Okay, I will stop a little bit to come to you about expository sermon. Now you get the idea, the difference between expository and topical. You see the difference? So what the main difference between the topical and expository? If I give you John 3:16 to preach from topical and form expository. What the difference between two styles of preaching? God love. Well, if you concentrate on topical, your division can come from many places that you like. You don't need to concentrate on John 3:16. But if you try to preach expository, all your division have to come from John 3:16 only. Now, this is the main difference. You cannot go out of John 3:16.
Between texture and expository. So texture sermon is you can same from the same scripture, your division from same scripture, and your subdivision, those can come from other verses, right?
Well, after this, we're going to talk about texture. And texture will build on top of expository, but it expands more. So you need to know the two kinds and the differences between topical and textual clear first. If you still confused on these two things, you cannot build on textual. It's going to get worse. You need to be very clear on these two types of sermon, topical and expository. You understand it clearly? How to build it, how to preach, how to study. Yes, Boone?
I have the question, example, if I pick from the like a Matthew 7 verse 7, พระคัมภีร์บอกว่าจงขอแล้วท่านจะได้รับแล้วก็จงซอกหาท่านจะได้พบจงเคาะแล้วจะมีผู้ใครให้ so this one can how I don't know how to I try this one try to explain on the same verse, same scripture here. So I don't know if try to be expository. So I asked Pastor Kong Sai help me. We're talking about that a little bit. So I try. Can I, salvation? Can I put some words, the Bible words? Contact it, and like about explain it.
Okay, now you have to decide first. What kind of sermon you want to preach? You want topical? You want textual? You want expository? You need to decide.
Yeah, I know when I try to, like expository, the same you said, I try to dig find out some words, contact the sermon. So that's I want to know that, mostly very hard. I do this 1 week already. Don't go nowhere yet.
Okay, now when you decide to preach expository from this passage, Matthew 7:7,
yes,
it's about prayer.
Oh, okay.
And then you see that it's not just to pray, how to get answer to your prayer. So this is, if you want to preach expository, you can put the topic on your title is how to get answer to your prayer. And Jesus teach the 3 ways to get answer to your prayer. Ask, seek, knock. That the 3 ways that Jesus said that you will get answer.
Yes.
You need to ask, you need to seek, and you need to knock. And now if you want to go deep on expository, you need to explain what Jesus means about ask. You need to dig to the Greek words or the real meaning that Jesus intends how to ask. Everyone asks, but why they don't get answer? What kind of asking that God will listen and answer from this passage? Then knock, how to knock, that God will listen and answer. and seek how to seek, where to seek. You can answer a few questions on that, and you can concentrate on your sermon. But if you want expository, you still have to concentrate on ask, seek, and knock.
Okay. Thank you, sir. ขอบคุณครับ
But if you want to concentrate on topical, you still can use the same topic, same title, how to get answer to your prayer. You can go anywhere if you want to concentrate on topical. You can get example from the Bible, how people get their prayer answer. You can pick up a story of a widow that Jesus tell the story of a widow who begged the judge for justice. The judge is not a good God judge, and she have no money to bribe him, but because she keep begging day after day, and the judge gets so tired of her, want to get rid of her, so he will kill her just to get rid of her from his life. So Jesus also said this is how to act without stopping, and God will answer. And you can go story by story when you want to go on topic, that how Jesus said that the prayer will get answer. Okay, you get more question or yes, Nathan?
So Ajahn, you said that when you preach expository, you don't get, you have to, you cannot add any verses from the Bible. You have to just stay in the passage that you chose.
I don't mean that you cannot, but your division have to be from the same passage. And you cannot use another division or subdivision from somewhere else. You can use some illustration, but your main division, your subdivision, all have to concentrate on one passage that we call expository.
But like you said, so if you give example, those example will be coming from the Bible. That will be okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
But it's just to support your division, not to contradict or offer something else new. But the different from topical. Topical, you have freedom to use anything, or your division can come from anywhere. So now you know that you have to decide first what kind of sermon you want to preach. And your structure will control you. But sometimes the passage will tell you what kind of sermon you should preach. But now if you have a lot of experience, you can preach any passage in topical, textual, or expository. Okay, Nathan?
Can you give examples, some passages that knowing that we can preach only expository?
Well, in fact, it's not, if you use the passage, even you use the passage, you still can preach in any style. Because your intention. But for a lot of preachers who are faithful to the words of God, they say that only expository or textual is the right way to preach. But a lot of modern famous preacher will concentrate on topical. Because they just need a little bit Bible mixed with all kind of things.
Ajahn, I'm thinking about the armor of God. Put on the armor of God. So you just use Ephesians 6, chapter 6, chapter 11 to maybe to 14, and just outline what's helmet, what is shield, sword, and what else? Sword,
You have helmet.
So at least
have-
all those 6. What each one of it's about. All Christians need to put on armor of God.
Yes. If you want to concentrate on expository, you have to explain every single thing there.
I cannot even find a word to use. Yeah, first thing I thought of is the to put on the armor of God, but I'm thinking about, but I haven't really write out anything yet. Hopefully by next week I have something, so that way you all can help.
Now, you get the idea that when Paul wrote that section, he imagined the uniform of Roman soldier. So in order to explain that, you need to go study about the Roman soldier uniform. If not, you're going to make mistake. The purpose why they put that on and what it make from, and what is the purpose of that part. So this is, you see that you need to know history, you need to know the culture, and you need to know where it comes from. A lot of people think about armor of God and compare with soldier uniform today. Soldier is a different story, different purpose. Some might similar, but still how it works, it's still not the same thing. So now you see that you need to understand history, culture, purpose, and a lot of things in order to teach expository. So this is why they call very deep study. A lot of parts of the Bible is 2,000 to 4,000 years old. When you try to explain that to modern day people, you need to bring them to 3,000 years ago situation, culture, history, language, and a lot of things that 2,000-3,000 years different from us. But the message still the same. But in order to understand that, you need to use many different lenses to look at them. When you use the 21st century lens to look at everything, now you misunderstood them a lot. And this is why a lot of modern day leader or preacher misunderstood the Bible, because they use their understanding of 21st century to explain a lot of things that come from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago without knowing the background at all. So they miss the point. Now you see that your job is a lot. It's not just pick up the Bible and spend 5 or 10 minutes to get ready to teach or preach. You need a lot more time than that. Okay, you have any more question on the difference between expository and topical? Now you can build your sermon if I give you something. Okay.
อาจารย์ when I look at อาจารย์ปุณ topic in the Lao language it says จงมัน be persistent in asking, in knocking, and in seeking. That's what the Lao mean by persistent. I mean, keep asking if you want your prayer to answer, right?
I don't think the topic is good enough.
Yeah.
The title is not good enough.
So if you want the answer to be prayer, you have to do three things. Or right? Trying to figure out the outline. I mean the title of that. So number one, they're asking for ask it is given and seek it, right? And it you shall find, right? That the English say?
So your title need to be about you get answer to your prayer.
Yeah.
So in simple way, just say that how to get your prayer answer.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Ajahn.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if you don't have any question, we will take a break. And when we come back, I will go to textual sermon and compare with the three of them. So you will see the difference of all kind of sermon. Okay, let's take a break now. Now, the textual sermon or the preaching, this kind is allowed 1800. So we talk about the 1900s is the most popular on the expository, but the textual is more popular around the 1800. So why in the past people love textual more than expository? Well,
double check.
It depends on
The answers don't match.
the preacher and also sometimes the people. Even in modern day, a lot of preachers still prefer textual
Again.
than other kind of sermon. Now, this is some history about the definition of textual sermon. Now, I just want you to see the main difference between the textual and the topical and the expository is the structure. In order to build a textual sermon, you need to have the outline of the expository first. So, for example, the topic of love from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 to 7. When you build a sermon on that topic, you preach about love, that topic of sermon, and you can pick anything from that passage or anywhere else to build your topical sermon. But when you preach expository from that love passage, you need to quote every single verse in that passage in your expository sermon. Now, when you try to preach textual from the same passage, you need to have some subdivision. For example, When you build, love is sacrifice. Love is patient. Now your subdivision, you need to explain what is patient. Or from other passages from the Bible, explain patient. Now you see that the expository, most of the time you just have main division. Sometimes you have subdivision. It still comes from the same passage. But when you build a textual sermon, you always have subdivision. And all those subdivision can come from anywhere else to support the main division. Now you see the difference between expository and textual now. Textual built on top of expository sermon outline. But textual will add subdivision from somewhere else to support the main division. In the same time, if you have subdivision for expository, it has to come from the same passage. You cannot borrow it from somewhere else. So that the main difference between expository and textual. Expository cannot get any idea from somewhere else. It just concentrates on one passage and dig very deep. Why the textual can borrow idea in the subdivision to support what they want to teach, and that is textual. Now this is some history of the past, how famous preacher tried to explain what is textual preaching in the past and today, and how it worked very well in some situation. And now people say that which one is better, textual or expository? Well, both of them work very well. But one thing that textual is more complicated. And you need to know what is your goal when you preach textual. You still have to keep on your main division. A lot of time when you go too far on your subdivision and people get lost. They don't know what you try to preach. And if you preach a very long sermon, people get lost a lot before you can bring them back to your main goal or division. Now you can guess that a lot of time textual sermons are longer than expository sermon and a lot longer than topical sermon because they always have subdivision. When you have subdivision, it means that it takes more time. A lot of time, it double the time of topical or expository sermon. So you can guess that textual sermon will take 40 minutes to an hour at least each time. While the topical can last 15 minutes, the expository can go from 20 to 30 minutes, but textual always take an hour. Now you see that it's more complicated, and it always have subdivision, and it go a long time. But why people want to preach a long sermon? Well, it depends on situation. A lot of old preacher in the old time, they love long sermon. And people have no other entertainment. People love to listen to long sermon too. They have a lot of patience and sit there for hours. But in modern day, a lot of people don't like textual sermon anymore because it's too long and it's too complicated. And modern day people want short sermon to the point. And this is some example. If you want to preach from Hebrew 12, verse 1 to 2, they use an example how to build a textual sermon. And this is some division that they used here and subdivision. Now you see that in textual sermon, the subdivision come from everywhere. You see A, and then subpoint is from Galatians, from Timothy, from everywhere. And you see that more and more Bible verses that you can use to support that subdivision in your textual sermon. It's almost like Bible teaching. And a lot of time, if you not build it well enough, people get lost. Because when you go to subdivision and you try to get to your main division and topic. So it's the job that you always have to come back to what you preach. Because there are a lot of detail and you use a lot of Bible verses to support your subdivision. Now, the textual outline is always, the main outline always have to come from the text, similar to expository. But the subdivision, you have a lot more freedom to get and to bring them to support your sermon at the whole thing. Now I explain in short. I just want you to see the picture clear, how to build your sermon. Now you see that three kinds of sermon. If you want to preach on the topic of love, from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 to 7, how you build your three kinds of sermon. On topic of sermon, you can build just what is love. Just answer one question, what is love? And on topical, you can borrow idea from everywhere. Just concentrate on love. You can preach about three kinds of love. Parent love, spouse love, and then God love. Because you just concentrate on the topic. You don't care much about the Bible verses. But if you want to use 1 Corinthians chapter 13, 4 to 7 to preach expository, you need to explain what is love from that passage. Love is kind, love is patient. And this is your division have to come from, exactly from that passage. That is expository. You explain deep on the Bible verse. You explain the background, the history, the language, the culture. And you cannot go anywhere else. That is expository. Now, if you preach textual, you need to have subdivision that come from other places to support your main division. For example, when you preach on the first main top division about love is kind, now you have to bring other passage to support what kind mean here. Gentleness, mercy, and that is two subdivision you can use about kindness in that meaning here. And they can come from other Bible verses to support what the Bible means about kindness. And you can go on and on. So now you see that the textual will be more complicated, the most complicated outline you can build for a sermon. And it can be really complicated and take a lot of time to preach a textual sermon. And if you don't build it well, correctly, you confuse both yourself and your listener. So now the more popular sermon that you can guess, the easiest one to build and to preach it topical. The second popular one that a lot of famous preachers today preach it expository. It takes more time to build, it takes more time to study and plan, but it really goes deep in the Bible and can build a church to make it very strong, because this is one of the best sermons of modern day time. You not go anywhere, you just concentrate on the passage that you select, and that is deep digging on the words of God. In the same time, when you want to preach textual sermon, when you have more time and you want to study deeper in the Bible and all the application that you can get, you have a lot of time, textual can answer that need. So now I want you to be clear on three kinds of sermon: topical, expository, and textual. This is the three main kind. Modern day, they might call different name and different kind of sermon. But this is always the three main kind that last for so long. Now you have idea the different, all three of them. And you can preach each sermon in different way. So it depends on what is your goal and what is the best situation for that time. I always say that topical sermon will fit well in special occasion, like wedding, funeral, Father Day, Mother Day, Easter, Christmas. Topical work very well on those occasions. But in regular Sunday, I think expository will serve best, because it helps build up the church in the long term. And for you as a preacher, you can preach for years after year from expository sermon. If you as a pastor preach on topical only, in a few years you run out of topic, and you need to change church. So you can recycle your topic. It's no problem in America, because typical American pastor will change church in 3 years. So they can recycle the topic again and again. But if you're in a church that you're going to stay for a long time, build your sermon on expository, and you will never run out of the thing to preach. I have been preaching in one church for 40 years. I still not run out of thing to preach. Sometimes you can preach on textual in some situation. When you have retreat or some other revival or something that you have more time to study deep in the text that you want to spend time with your people, dig very deep and apply to a lot of situations. Textual will help. But now you see that each kind of sermon will work well for different situations. But you need all to know all of them, how to build them, how to preach them, and how to use them for the best of your church or your ministry. Okay, we open up for your reflection or question about the three kinds of sermon, the differences, and now you know the different well. Now, if I give you a title, can you build a sermon in 3 ways?
Nghe có trong lòng làครับอาจารย์ให้พระอาจารย์ไม่มาก็ต้องลองแล้ว
How
ถ้าไม่
about
ลอง
John
ไม่รู้
3:16? John 3:16. If you want, I want you to build a topic of sermon on John 3:16. God so loved the world.
Okay. This one topical. Okay. Topical.
How you preach the topic of sermon on John 3:16? You see, in order to build a topic of sermon or any sermon, you normally try to answer the question, who, what, where, when, why, how. Sometimes you answer all, sometimes you answer just 1 or 2 questions in different way. For example, John 3:16, when you want to answer what is love or what is God love, it's just what? An answer from that topic. Or you try to answer how God love or why God love and who God love. You can answer a few questions or just 1 question in different way. And that's how you preach, how to build a sermon. And from that passage, we have answer. Who God love? Man, sinner, everyone. So you just answer 1 question, who God love? Or you can answer just why God loved us. He created us. He gave birth to us. And we are his children. So it's just a simple way to build a sermon, answer a few questions, that's all. How he loved us, if you try to answer that question. He sent his son to take our sin, to die on the cross, to pay the fine of sin for us. This is how he loved us. So now you see that in that 1 verse, you can preach so many sermons. Just answer 1 question at a time or a few questions at a time. You can preach topical, expository, or you can make a textual sermon. And each passage you can preach in many ways. Okay, you have more question or reflection on how to build a sermon? How about if I ask you to preach on the topic of faith? Hebrew chapter 11, what is faith? You can build a sermon, topic of sermon on what is faith or how to have faith. What is the benefit of faith? So you just answer a quick question or ask yourself the question, and then you can build your sermon to answer that. But on expository, the passage that you pick tell you what you're supposed to preach. It's different from topical. The passage tell you what can you preach. You just obey the passage, what God tell you, what to preach. So now the expository will be more faithful to the words of God than topical. And you build a church that way on the words of God, not on your idea or society standard. Topical sermon always change with time, with society, with culture, but expository and textual don't change. It's always stick with the words of God all the time. Okay, question, reflection. Or you want to share your outline with us on each sermon that you build? You start writing now? I don't know, on your Monday group, you do some kind of writing sermon or make outline?
We did practice on the little bit, Ajahn.
And you help one another to understand how to make the sermon.
Okay, Monday night group. I don't know. Does it help? Do you understand a little bit?
Yeah, much, we little bit understand because we try to figure it out, how to kind of put topical, expository or texture. Mostly, people bring in just like, we study. So even, Pastor, what the name? I forgot. Sophie. Yeah, at the sofa in Laos, he share last Monday. He the one to share, that what we decided how to figure it out. So much I try next week. I don't know. So I try to grab some that try to make some texture or something like that. Try mostly all the time. I give the words to the people in the church. But we are mostly, I know right now, so the same I told you, Ajahn, so I read mostly topical, because very hard to understand, to go deeper, about language, Hebrew language, we never know that. I know that we have little bit knowledge, so I know that some speak a lot because I know God put in a message, to get out. But I go back, from last week, I take all my I use how many years already, I take it out, or some mixed. like you freeze, you freeze the pig, in the farm, you put everything in the food in the bowl. So I left it myself, looking back 5 years. Thank God, this year because we have more the group, we understand a little bit, how to make the head, make the neck, make the bone, put the meat on. So that's a very good. Thank you, Ajahn Kongzai. Try to make sometimes we have head, but we put the leg on the neck. So that's the problem. So thank you.
I hope that the blind doesn't lead the blind.
Okay.
Yes, on the Monday night, we learn a lot because, we share each other, Chan Kongzai and Chan Poon and Chan Sufei. I see that each of us, sermon. Yes, it's very good, but to me, the Chan Sufei, did he give you he emailed to you, Chan Kongzai? For me, that's I learned from that very good because I see him do the expository, and he based on that the scripture that what he on the topic, and then but the explanation is not that much, but that's a good enough for the class. If for the class about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, that one, yeah, I can see that I learned from that also. Too good. I forgot the topic and the scripture for the Lao. I forgot Lao Bible. Uncle Sai, remember that?
It is we are dead, but we are saved by the grace of God, right? นั่นบ่อาจารย์พุน
Yeah.
Check it out. What you got right?
That time I
I
forgot.
think he missing the neck.
Yeah, that's only one, and then later
Yeah.
on he put the neck, and then that's a complete the body, complete the whole body. It's not fat, it's not skinny, and to me, I see that not perfect, but complete human. It's it's not a cat. Yeah, it's good. Mine is not yet. Maybe next couple weeks, okay. Because right now we do have about 4, at least 3 funeral, 3.
It basically, Ajahn, I think is like explaining the Bible. I mean, interpret. I mean, more like explaining each point. Yeah, like a Bible study.
Yeah, but as you see, Bible study and preaching, they still have different format. Can you tell a difference between preaching and teaching?
Preaching is Ajahn, so that we prepare to preach and then answer by ourselves, right? And if a teaching, we can have an audience to describe or what they want to ask the question, right, Ajahn?
Yeah, I think the goal for preaching and teaching is a little bit different. Teaching, mostly we want people to get the knowledge. But preaching, we want to inspire them to change or to do something. That's the main difference. But still, teaching, preaching, we want them to know the words of God. But in preaching, we want them to do some action too. That's why preaching need more than head knowledge. They need heart and feeling too. So you see that the good preaching always have to think about head and heart.
We don't have heart. Ajahn, remember our preaching no heart.
Just head.
I cannot make the audience to.
Yeah, teaching we mainly emphasize on head, mean that a lot of knowledge. But preaching also expect the heart to change to feeling, touching.
Yeah, that's the difficult part. That's the difficult part for me to make heart done.
So it's double job.
Yeah. Oh, Ajahn, I have a question that
Yeah.
I saw some pastor, they write the preaching sermon, but I don't know, I cannot recognize that what kind of sermon, because they put the topic and they use the one verse like we do the expository sermon, but later they bring different
Support.
verses
Mhm.
and to put and that I don't know, is that like texture or the expository?
I consider
Yeah.
that is topical.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand. Actually, I remember Ajahn explained that if topical, we can answer the question and we can use different verses to support or to answer. That is topical sermon, right? And if expository sermon, we can use the only the Bible, which one we preach, we cannot go out. We only use that part and to explain. So we have to use only that area, those verses to explain. And also the texture. I remember Ajahn said that we use the scripture and we can get the main idea from the text that make the main idea, and later we can get the subdivision from different verses. But when I see that pastor writing like that, so I don't know which one. So that's why I have a question. They put the one verse, the scripture, the main scripture, and they use the main idea, the key point. The key point, they use that, and then later they bring the different one, like one subdivision, 2 or 3 put in, but I don't know that one. I'm kind of confused, so I don't know. So I want to ask Ajahn, what kind of sermon is that?
So what he tried to preach?
He preached like last time the birthday.
I think it's a birthday.
Yeah, the birthday. The birthday a scripture.
The topic is birthday.
Yeah, the topic is birthday. And then he put one verse. They use a scripture. The main scripture is one verse, and then later
With the support.
yeah, with the support, and he the next like a main point. That one he also used that scripture like he do the expository
1, 2, 3, and then scripture 1, 2, 3, and then put it.
he put a different scripture. So
What he tried to answer that birthday? He tried to answer what is birthday or why we have birthday. What birthday?
No,
that's
Ajahn,
confused. I
this
don't
is
know.
not, I cannot understand, okay? Whole sermon, I got lost.
And I don't
Not him
understand.
cannot get out, but I get lost.
Maybe he's still in the wilderness.
Maybe he preached a topical.
I believe that he do the tropical, but to me that he formed the textual, like you know, the format like a textual, and then this is a pretty sure that's a tropical sermon.
So you see, people need to know that what you try to tell them. For example, this sermon is about birthday. So what he tried to tell you, what is birthday or why we have birthday? What is birthday important? Or what is the purpose of birthday? He tried to tell you something.
All kind of a mix. Why, what, how, who, and then all those, I got it. I have that or everything.
So why we need to know about our birthday?
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. So maybe that's some kind of special sermon or I don't know. That's why I would like to ask Ajahn what kind of a sermon is that? Maybe special.
Or maybe some kind of the sermon like that. Maybe that we don't know that kind of sermon. or maybe new.
So,
So what is this scripture from?
We do write it down, but actually right now I don't have that small book with me. I will, get that thing and I will share together.
so Ajahn, my question is, so for the preaching is 3 kind only, right?
I cannot say it only 3 kind. This is the 3 main
Or 3 main,
preaching.
okay, 3 main
Oh, okay,
preaching.
Yeah.
So maybe that is a different one. We haven't seen it before. I don't know.
Well, I always say that if you're famous, you can preach any style, people still listen. Is he famous now?
You don't want to say that.
I don't know.
1 hour, 25 minutes for that sermon, for birthday sermon.
Well, I guess that if you preach about birthday sermon, it's about someone's birthday so important in church. And you try to tell people that his birthday means so much to the church because he's important. He sacrificed so much for God. So we try to remember his birthday, to celebrate it or something.
No, but this sermons just make the birthday boy or birthday girl be happy only. Just make them happy, make the scripture telling this and that, to blessing this, blessing that. Maybe that's all. It's not another thing.
Well, maybe
Yeah,
different.
we'll get it back. I will get it. Maybe someday I will get it.
Yes, Nathan.
Thank you.
Ajahn, one time I was listening one pastor, he was teaching that sometimes people they preach between topical and expository, so it can like just between, or maybe like between between 2 different types of sermons. Just like zebra.
Well, now I heard a lot of people say that the preacher cannot land, or they cannot find the airfield to land. People ever tell you like that when you're going to land?
John, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead, Nat. Go ahead.
Did you go into homiletic already? Your
Tonight we go on chapter 7 and 8. Oh no, 6 and 7 maybe.
yeah, but your chapter 8 mentioned something about homiletic.
Let's see. We're talking tonight about expository and textual sermon. Is that you get?
Yeah, it's on page 2. It's a good place to begin. A quest for definition is the classic homiletic.
Oh. Homiletic also in the Old West, they used to explain preaching. The word preaching more modern day than in the past. In the past, they don't use the word preaching that much.
But homiletic is also as it's pretty clear set of how to preach, isn't it? Because they go by the passage of the Bible and then divisions and subject sentence and asking questions. I thought that's pretty clear in a way too.
Yeah, you see, the 3 style of sermon is some kind we call modern day making. It means that this kind of sermon style is developed in around 20th century, clearly. in the past, if you go to the New Testament, Old Testament, when Paul preached, a lot of time his style is almost like Bible study or topical. And it's a mix-up of textual too. You see that they never tell that what kind of sermon they preach. But today we try to divide them into different kinds. Make it clear that what we want to concentrate on different style. So it's more of the 20th century style that we have of today. But in the past, it's not clear what kind of style they preach. They mix up everything. And a lot of time you might call storytelling. Now you heard some preacher, they preach the style of storytelling. Yeah, Nathan.
Our famous preacher Joe Austin, what style he's preaching?
I think most of the time it's topical. And he preached just a few topics all the time. I heard him preach a few times. I did not heard him preach every week. And he just preached how to be rich like me, have a beautiful wife like my wife, get a fancy car like what I have. That's all I heard about him say. So we call prosperity preaching. And you don't believe that it's born in America in the 20th century, not long ago. But it spread all over the world and people love it. Yeah, Nathan?
In America, a lot of the time, those I cannot say that false teachers, but false preachers, but here we kind of like making fun of them, but the other country, they love them. Like last time I went back, I was talking to my cousin, and he's really the fan of Benny Hinn. I saw he has a book of Benny Hinn, translated to French.
Well, you can guess, everybody want to be rich. If you decide to write a book how to be a millionaire, I believe you will sell your book. But if you're going to write a cookbook how to make a meal dishes, maybe people won't buy it. But the book that always sell with how to be a millionaire is always sell. Now, as I say that the modern day three style of sermon is just something we make up in modern time. In the old time, they don't have theory or textbook about how to preach. This is something modern day, we make it up. But we find out that this is the style that can help you preach. And I always say, sum up that when you're famous, you can preach any style, people still listen to you. Or if God used you, you can preach any style. But why you still not famous? I think you should follow some guideline that will help you build up your sermon and help people to understand you easier. And if you go back to the history of preaching, all this style will come up clearly in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. If you go further in Paul or Jesus' time, you listen to Paul preach, you might cannot guess what style he preached because he have everything. It's almost like storytelling, the way Paul preached, or even other preacher in the New Testament, or the prophet in the Old Testament. It's almost like storytelling. But it worked in certain time. And you can try to preach the way of storytelling. It worked very well with young people and people who don't have a lot of knowledge of the Bible. The storytelling always works. Okay, you have any more questions? Let's look at the syllabus. So today we're going to cover section 7. And they say next week, one paper due. Let's see what paper is due. You have attendant, participant, you have reading, you have group study, topic paper. They want you to do 2 papers about the history of the Bible. Now we're going to adjust a little bit because this is about English Bible mainly. So you can have another option. And I say that you can translate the note into another language, or no, choose another option, make a short note of every chapter. Okay, that can work. And another special project that you have to do is the history of Bible in your language. So number 4, number 5 are not the same thing. Number 5 is the history of Bible in your language. So you need to write a short history to get the idea how Bible come into your own language. The translation, when it start and who do it, or the team, and how many versions, at least get some idea about how they translate Bible into your own language, your own culture. So you have to select this project too. And I allow you to do it yourself or with a team. So that will help if you can build a team and help one another. So it's going to be a lot easier instead of doing everything yourself. And number 4 is different thing. Number 4 is, I just want you to do something that you can use that different from number 5. And you don't need to do 2. I just allow you to do just one thing. Okay, that's the difference between number 4 and number 5. Okay, you have question on the assignment on number 4 and number 5? And I allow you, you don't need to present anything next week or on week 8. You can keep it until you're ready. Let's see. So week 8, one paper due, week 12, another one, and week 15 is another one. So you can do it, and whenever you're ready to share, you can share. Okay, you have question on project number 4 and number 5? Okay, so you don't have question. Let's go to week section 7, sorry. Today we talk about how New Testament come to us. And last week we mentioned a little bit about Old Testament and some New Testament. We compare a little bit. As you see that Old Testament is something 4,000 years ago when it started. But New Testament is about 2,000 years ago. It's more modern. The Old Testament one is old, and as we know that it starts with the verbal, passed on generation to generation by mouth. And people keep most of them by memory. And we have a lot of reason to doubt that can people correctly remember everything? Well, by human standard, impossible. But when God get involved, it's possible. You might remember something you memorized since you was a young child. Even today, you still remember it exactly. Like all the alarm that you recite when you're young, you still can recite them. And that's the same thing at Old Testament time. People memorize a certain books. And not everyone memorize the whole Bible. The smart way for them is each one memorize one book. And they pass on that book, like Genesis. You know that there's a story telling that the whole team memorized the Old Testament, and each one have a name. For example, this is Genesis guy, and his team is all named Genesis, mean that this team just memorized the book of Genesis. And the second group, Exodus. They memorized the whole book of Exodus. So this is how they pass on generation to generation, the book of each of the Bible. But now we talk about New Testament. New Testament is so different because by the New Testament time, we already have everything record in book form. But when I say book form, I don't mean the book that we have in modern day. We talk about written form, all kind of written form in the New Testament time. We have record. And that a lot better because when you have something on record, it lasts a long time. And beside that, we know that the New Testament have been copied a lot. As we mentioned last week that when the book of certain book, especially the letter of Paul, Peter, John, James went from church to church. And the letter don't stay long in each church. It normally stay a week or a month. And in that time period, the people at that church will start copy at nighttime. So they have their own copy because the original will go on from church to church, never stay in one place. So now you see that the letter will go everywhere and every church will make their own copy. So now we have a lot of copy of New Testament. It can be good and bad. Good mean that you have so many copy. The bad thing is you need to compare every copy you have to find out the perfect one, because this is copied by hand, by people, not by machine. So there are always some differences because people cannot perfectly copy the whole book themselves all the time. Sometimes they get tired, sometimes they forget a mark, sometimes they forget a little bit thing. It's not a big thing that they make differences, but still to be correctly have the Bible, they compare every copy that they can find. And the oldest copy get priority. It means that the oldest copy, they believe that is closer to the original one than the later copy. So this is normal thing. So now the Bible, the New Testament come to us in many formats because 2000 years ago, it passed on generation to generation. From the Greek original, they have translated into different languages. The New Testament have been translated long time ago because more believers believe to become Christian. And the next new generation don't know Greek. So the Bible, the New Testament especially, have been translated into different dialects more than 1,000 years ago, from Greek into all the native languages of the people. But we talk about different kind of text because now we talk about the Alexandria. As we mentioned before, Alexandria is in Egypt. It's not in Greek, but Alexander the Great wanted to build a new capital in Egypt. And he started the library there, called the university there. They want to pass on Greek culture into other parts of the world. And he select Alexandria. And all the things will develop there. And Greek alphabet, Greek language, going to be the mother of a lot of languages later on. It's like today, you know that a lot of languages in Asia adopt we call Romanized alphabet. So what is the good of Romanized alphabet of modern day? A lot of languages. It's easier to learn. And almost internationally, people can pronounce it because it's in Romanized alphabet. And the Greek do the same thing 2,000 years ago. A lot of culture will adopt the Greek alphabet and use it to sound out their own language. So now you see that it's not just today that we use Romanized alphabet, but the Greek also do that in Europe and many other countries 2,000 years ago. So sometimes you call the Western text, the Greek alphabet have been used everywhere. and it helped the people to who have the spoken languages but don't have the alphabet. They adopt the Greek one, the Greek alphabet. And that's the standard in a lot of European countries and a lot of African countries too. And also a lot of Asia Minor will adopt it, but the culture will change from time to time. Now we talk about another Eastern form of text. Now we talk about Asia Minor and a lot of people who live there. At first, they adopt the Greek alphabet, but later on, especially when they became Islam, the idea of have their own alphabet will form. Now they will use the Greek, the Roman, and their own way of writing to form their own alphabet to use. I think that part of the format that they might call Arabic or the symbol will start here. And that is around the 5th, the 6th, 7th century that they're so popular in those Asia Minor and in parts of North Africa. And here another text that they later on will translate the New Testament into they call Byzantine text. And this is, now you see that Constantine, the Roman emperor who became Christian, will build a new capital in the east. And he called this Empire Byzantine. And the capital is in modern-day Turkey. Now it's different from Rome in Western Roman Empire. Byzantine, they will call Eastern Roman Empire. And the capital is today in Turkey. And you see the text will be a little bit different now. Now you see that the Eastern Empire will be mostly Asian, especially all the Asia Minor country. The Roman come there to live there, but a few hundred years after that, the Turk will take over the Eastern Roman Empire. And it's the mix of culture, the mix of alphabet will happen there. But the whole point that we want to know about that is the New Testament have been translated to different dialect, different script throughout that several hundred years. And we have more copy of the New Testament in different dialect and in different alphabet that we have so many of them. Now that is another good thing, mean that we have a lot of copy of New Testament to compare from different culture, different alphabet, and different time. And here we have more history about each version of Greek, of different alphabet that the New Testament have been translated to different times. So the Bible have a lot of versions in different languages. Even in Jesus' time, people in Jesus' time used the Old Testament, not in Hebrew format. The popular format or version that used in Jesus' time is Septuagint. And when we talk about Septuagint, it's the Greek dialect that's so popular in Jesus' time. And that in the Old Testament, not in Hebrew format, but in Greek alphabet. Because they have been translated into Greek, the language of the world in Jesus' time. I mean, the language of the culture of the educated people is in Greek. Even Jesus' time, they speak Aramaic, but the language, the written language is Greek. Now you talk about New Testament, how it have been transmitted. We mean that transmitted mean that passed on generation to generation from one group of people to another group of people. They don't use the word translate because sometimes they pass on in different way, not exactly translate, but they pass on one generation or one group of people to another group of people in many ways, more than translation. You don't believe that even in those days, people still pass on the New Testament by words of mouth. Memory still work. Or sometimes they use art to pass on the New Testament to different group of people. Now we talk about the date. As I said before, that the New Testament have been passed on by copy, not translate, but copy the original and give to another group, another generation by copy again and again and again. So now we have from the early copy to the very late copy, the span is more than 1,000 years. So you mean that from AD 50, AD 100 until AD 1,400 something. So it means that for 1,400 years, the New Testament have been passed on by the way copied by hand or passed on by the words of mouth. For 1,400 years until around the 16th century, when the West start using printing shop. And that is the time that the New Testament start really printing out, and the new form of translation really start. Martin Luther start translating the New Testament and the whole Bible into German around the 16th century. And the English Bible have been translated from Greek and Hebrew around the 15th century too. So you see that the Bible need not translate into a lot of languages until 15th and 16th century. So in the past, when people want to read the New Testament, they need to know Greek or some languages that not English, not modern day languages. So the question is why people don't translate the Bible earlier. Well, a lot of things. One thing that we know from church history is the church do not allow translation. Now, the good question is why the church stop people from translating the Bible into other languages. You see that the church allowed the translation of the Bible from Hebrew and Greek into Latin, allowed the about the 8th and the 9th century. Jerome is a Catholic priest who translated the Bible into Latin, allowed that time, 8th or 9th century. And from that day on, the church do not allow any translation of the Bible. The church opposed. The church stopped everyone who tried to translate the Bible. Now the question is why? Most people don't know Bible. They cannot read Bible. And even when they translate into Latin around the 8th and 9th century, most people still cannot read it because most people don't have education. Only some people have enough education to read the Bible. And you don't talk about translate it into other language. It's impossible. The church opposes it. The church do not allow it. Well, if you ask the church why, they say that they don't trust anyone to do the good job. That's the answer. But if you dig down deep in history, the church are afraid of the truth. Why the church afraid of the truth? The church, because the Roman church did not follow the Bible. They do whatever they want, and they don't want people to know the Bible, to know that they are not obey the Bible. That is the main thing. If people can understand the Bible, people will know the truth that the leadership of the church did not obey the Bible, did not believe the Bible, did not do the thing the Bible tells them to do. So better don't let anyone read the Bible. Don't let anyone know the Bible. So they keep the truth away from people. Yeah. Believable. This is the fact. So when Martin Luther, John Calvin, in the 16th century start translate Bible into Germany, to French, to English, now the church tried to kill them because the truth will come out. But even they translated, how they send all the translation to all the people. The printing machine helped them make it possible. When they translate today, tomorrow, the printing shop print what they translate into mass production. At least several hundred copies overnight. They can post it everywhere. This is Bible. Just translate and all the truth come out. And the church cannot burn every copy, cannot kill everyone because it go everywhere. The real truth come out now. And this is how the Reformation success, because in the past, nobody know the truth. Whatever the church say, they believe. But now they know that the church did not tell them the truth, did not tell the real story from the Bible. And it's a very interesting story. The West know how to use printing shop around the 16th century. But you know that the Chinese already do the printing in the 2nd century, 3rd century. Why it take 1200 years, the idea from China go to Europe. The oldest printing script in Chinese is already done about the 2nd, 3rd century. But why it take 1,200 years for the West to learn about printing shop? That's a good question. The Chinese know how to make paper around the 2nd century, but the West know how to make paper around 13th, 14th century. Wow, it's more than 1,000 years before the technology from China come to Europe. You don't believe that? Something happened in Europe for 1,000 years that all technology stopped there at the border. You know that the Roman, I talk about the original Roman before they became Christian. They built all the Colosseum with concrete. It still stands today after 2,000 years. But after the European became Christian, the technology of concrete disappeared for 1,000 years. You know that after European became Christian, they don't know how to make concrete anymore. They just build all the building by stone again. They go back 1,000 years, all the technology disappear for more than 1,000 years. And we, the West, know how to make concrete again not long ago. Now, all the question is, why the technology that the Greek, the Roman know, the Chinese know, 1,000, 2,000 years ago disappear. And it just popped up not long ago. We go back, what, 1,400, 500 years. All the technology disappear. Well, you can guess. The biggest problem is the Roman Catholic Church. They stop all the technology. They don't allow anyone to know any knowledge of the truth. So they believe that by doing that, they can control everyone under their power. And that's a sad thing. 1,400 years disappear. And how they control the whole world that long in the dark. Well, we talk about all the technology, and here talk about all kind of media. When we talk about media, we talk about animal skin. Parchment is also animal skin, and reuse animal skin as a paper. You know that this technology is start in the time of Egypt, Assyrian, and that is 4,000 years ago. And you know that it passed on until 1,000, less than 500 years ago. You know that the Egyptians know how to make paper several thousand years ago. But why the technology disappear? It's like the question is, the Egyptians do know how to preserve mummy 4,000 years ago. And then they lost the recipe. They don't know how to do it again until less than 400-500 years ago. What happened to them? Unbelievable, something. We talk about paper. China know how to make paper in the 2nd century. Now the Arab will take technology from China in around the 8th century. The European will know how to make paper around the 10th century. But they're not widely used until the 12th century. And the Bible started printing in paper around the 16th century. Now you see that the gap between time is so wide, it's unbelievable. Today, if you invent something, tomorrow the whole world know and use your technology. But in the past, there's a big gap happened. And you know that the Bible passed on from the Jew to the European, and did not grow fast because all the technology stopped there. They still copy the Bible by hand until the 15th century, before they know how to print the Bible with the print shop, with the printing machine, around the 16th century. So it's not long ago. And now we compare the original copy of New Testament after 2000 years. There's so many of them. So this is the most popular book in the history of humankind. I have a chart that I want you to see how it's unbelievable. So many copies of Bible, especially the New Testament. Let you look at the chart. Here. Let's see. There are several books. Okay. Homer is the Greek philosopher who wrote Iliad. It's the story of the history of Greek, all kind of god, goddess. It's written BC 800, mean that 2,800 years ago. And the first copy we found is written about 400 BC. Mean that 400 years after he died, we found the first copy. So it means that when he wrote the story, it passed on word by mouth, not in the written format. 400 years ago, we found the oldest copy. So the gap is 400 years. Now, modern day, we found that people make 643 copies of that. In that time, 2,000 years, there are 643 copies of the book Iliad by Homer. Now, Herodotus is the Greek philosopher and historian. He started teaching about 480 BC. And we found the first copy that written about AD 900. Mean that before that it just was of mouth, but the first oldest copy is just around 1,000 years ago. So the gap from his time of teaching until the first copy we found is 1,350 years. And today we found only 8 copies of his book. That's all. And another historian is the similar thing. Live in the similar time, only 8 copies too. Plato, very famous Greek philosopher. He started teaching around 400 years before Jesus' time. And we found the first copy of his book, 980. Mean that he already dead for 500 years before people start recording or writing something about him. The gap is 1,300 years between when time he lived and the time that his book come out. 8 copy. Demosthenes, another philosopher, is in the same time as Plato, 7 copy. Caesar is another Greek philosopher. Now you see that it's all in the same time. And we found 10 copies. And now this guy, Livy, is a Roman historian. So he lived around the 1st century, the time of the apostle. And we just found his writing, partial, about 400 years after his death. And we found a complete copy of his story 1,000 years after his death. And this is another historian or the Roman historian, born around AD 100, similar time. And after that death, 1,000 years, we just found his writing. So the point is, we not know for sure that is he the one who write it or someone after his death 1,000 years start writing about him. And we found 20 copies, 7 copies. Now compared to our New Testament. The New Testament written around AD 50 to 100, or New Testament. And we found the first copy is 114, mean that it's just a few years after it was written, we found the older copy. It's just a few years gap. So you see that we found this just 50 years after it was written. And how many copies that we found? 5,366 copies. So now you talk about 1 copy, 8 copy, 10 copy, and 5,000 copies. What a big difference. And the time you see that this is the same time from 80th century to the New Testament. This is the same time. But all these things just a few copies. But New Testament, we almost have 6,000 copies in the same time period, in 100 years. So why we do this? To show you that the New Testament is not a make-up story. It has been written widely thousands of years ago. But all these books just make up a few hundred years ago. After their death, 400 years, 1,000 years, and we don't even know that this is real book by the author or not, or make up book, because the author dead for 1,000 years. How could you know that what he say, what he written? So a lot of this book have doubt that the author have anything to do with the book. It's so long, 1,000 years after their death, 1,300 years after their death, the book just pop up. It's like after you die 1,000 years, some people write the book about you and claim that you are the one who authored the book. So you have a lot of doubt. Compared to the New Testament, it just almost slides away. The book record what happened in the New Testament time. You see that 50 years after the first record of Jesus, the gospel come out. And all the authors still alive when the book come out. So this is something that can prove that this is fresh from the people who are alive wrote it. It's not 1,000 years after their death. It's just in their lifetime. And it's not just a few copies. It's almost 6,000 copies by hand. This is our Bible. So it to prove that this is a popular book and thousands of people read it, copy it. And now we talk about how old our Bible is and how many proof we have. If we lost all the New Testament, you know that we still can take the code from all book that written about New Testament, and we can complete the New Testament by just take all the code from all books. Like John Martyr, he quote the gospel in his book 268 times, and the Act 10 times, Paul later 43 times, and other epistles 6 times, Revelation 3 times. So total 330 times that he quote in his book. And you keep the list go on. All these old books that written in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th century quote the Bible 36,000 times. I mean, quote the New Testament almost 40,000 times. When they quote it, they quote a lot. So they say that even we lost all the New Testament, we put all this book together, we can have the New Testament complete. It means that all these people who live AD to 2,000 years ago already quote Bible in their book, in their record. So this is not new book just make up 100 years ago, but it's 2,000 years old. People already read New Testament, already quote New Testament in their writing. So the proof is New Testament is very old and people use it for 2,000 years now. Widely used, acceptable. So this is why to prove that the New Testament is available for thousands of years and have been accepted by everyone and copy it widely, available for 2,000 years and accepted by everyone for a long time. Now, this is another topic that they want us to talk about. What textual criticism, what that means. We don't like the word criticism. It means bad thing. It means that you don't like the people or something. But for the Bible, we're not afraid of this word. We use the word textual criticism. What that means? Mean that because we have thousands of copies of New Testament, we need to compare them. We need to study them and find the best copy or the best thing from all those differences. So this is the whole meaning of textual criticism. It doesn't mean that we try to challenge the authority of the Bible or we doubt the Bible. But for 2,000 years, our Bible scholars try to compare Bible, the New Testament, to find the best original, close to the original as much as we can. As you see that for 2,000 years, all the Bible come by words of mouth, Old Testament, and the New Testament come by people copy it. And we all know that when people copy it for so many generations, there might be some differences, not intentionally, but because of man can make mistake. When you try to copy the whole Bible, whole New Testament, mistake can happen. Because not everyone have all the education to do this job, just a few. And this is a heavy job, a hard work. So the whole theory of textual criticism is we get all the copy that we can have, compare them, study them, and choose the best copy we can get. By we study the text itself, how old is it, where we get it, and the quality of the ink, quality of the skin that written on, and all kind of things that we can get to know that copy the best we can and compare with another copy until we found the best, the oldest, the best, the closest to the original. And that is the purpose of textual criticism. So whenever they found a copy in the desert, in the jar that they bury it, they will put the number on the text. And they have all kind of number to know that when they quote, when they check the copy, they know that where this copy come from, when we found it, how old is it, the quality of everything. So they compared several thousand, and I mentioned that 5,000-6,000 copy of New Testament. To find the best is a lot of work, and it takes thousands of scholars, and it takes several hundred years of work to do this job. And we found out that as time go by, we should keep learning. And do you believe that we still find new copy of New Testament, even of today? The most famous discovery of the Bible we call the Dead Sea Scroll, that they found about 50 years ago in the cave, in the desert, in the Dead Sea. They found a lot of old copy of Old Testament and even some New Testament there. I don't mean that it's like a book, it's on the skin of animal, and it's so fragile. They cannot even open it up because it will falling apart, because it's so old. So they use all kind of technology to read it without touching it. Unbelievable. Slowly, verse by verse, they read the whole scroll and try to compare what we have with modern day Bible. Do you know what the miracle is? What we have today almost exactly as the oldest copy we have that written thousands of years ago. Almost exactly. So what that means? It means that all the one who do the copy work real hard, try to make sure that every verse they copy is correct. It's a lot of work, and they do a very good job. Why? Because they know this is the words of God. They cannot make mistake. They do whatever they can to make sure that every verse they copy correct. Unbelievable job. And when you divide the branch of biblical criticism, they divide in textual criticism, philological, literary, and traditional form. It's just the different way how they study the Bible. And when they compare how they were copied by tradition, by alphabet, and by all kind of different ways to see that which one is the oldest copy. Even some of the copy is in the same similar period of time, they still find the better one, not by age, but by different way to find out. For example, they found 10 copies that have the same age. In that 10 copies, they still have number 1, 2, 3, until 10. How they rate that 10 copies? They have many other ways. In 10 copies, they don't say all 10 are the same quality. They still have number 1 to 10 for them by different standards. And this is not talk about 10 copies. We talk about 6,000 copies at least. Every single one have a rate from the best to the not so good. This is a big job. But they have done this, doing this for several hundred years. And thousands of people get involved in this work. Why they do this? To make sure that we get the best copy of the Bible, close to the original that God intended for us. And they take this seriously, work so hard on it. So we have the best Bible that we can get, that man can dream of, and God intend for us. Okay, this is the general idea, what we learned tonight about how we get our New Testament. So when you go to the bookstore next time and buy a copy of New Testament, don't think, oh, it's just a few dollars. But before we get it, thousands of people work so hard for several hundred years. A lot of them give their whole life for us to have the best copy of the Bible.
Dan, I have a question.
Yes.
When we buy Bible, I mean, I find it, is it, I mean, I look through the publisher now today, because I don't know, I mean, you know, who wrote the Bible itself. I don't know who is the closest to the Bible originally.
Now we will have one chapter at the end of the course, how to select the Bible, which copy, which version is the best. And you know that I can tell you before we go to that chapter 14, that the best copy of the Bible is what you need. What you need the most. A lot of copy are good by itself, mean that it's just your intention to use it. Each version is copy designed for different purpose. But if you look at the quality of the translation, most of them are good, up to standard. But each version designed for different purpose and for different group of people. For example, all the Today English version designed for a simple people, don't have a lot of education or non-Christian. That Today version will work for them. And the NIV is more general Christian. NIV for general Christian. And if you for scholar, you have to go to a different version like American Standard, Revised Standard. Those are more for scholar. It's more literally translation. So now you see that each copy have different group of people in the disciple. And now it's just your purpose, what you're going to use the Bible for. If you use it for regular reading in general, NIV will work best. Or similar version. But if you want to give to your friend who are children, non-believer, Today English version will help the best. Or Living Bible, that very simple version. But for you yourself as a Bible scholar or Bible student, you need American Standard or Revised Standard version. Why? Because all this standard version will try to stick to the original as much as possible. They don't care much to make sense in English, but to make sense with the original. So that's what you need. Yes, Kat?
อาจารย์ for the translation about the Bible อาจารย์ selection note อาจารย์ can I pick the same thing like อาจารย์ said So that Mian translation, we don't have the app. That's very difficult, but I try my best. Me and Farm and Nathan and Farm, and maybe we can go for the whole chapter from chapter 14. But maybe not even a whole semester. We cannot finish that chapter, but we will try that chapter. It's okay.
You talk about one chapter.
Yeah, you want to make it more than that?
So what?
Hmm.
What
Like Ajahn said, want us to do all the lecture note or what?
Well, try your best. I don't know how difficult it is. So
So difficult, Ajahn.
We try it, but whole night, not even one page, because word by word, and there is no app, and then that's so difficult. And then we forgot to save the we do the computer translation, and then we forgot to save, and then we turn off the computer crash, and all gone. Nothing left, no more.
that happen all the time. So when you do the second time, it's a little bit easier.
Ajahn, I remember that Ajahn said Ajahn going to find the one that Ajahn wrote it.
Yeah, please.
That one is not that as long as this one. Right?
Well, when I have time, I go to rewrite the note again, make it half shorter.
Yeah,
least.
that way maybe some chapters too many pages.
Ajahn can send the Thai and for me to have the key a little bit, because I have English, have Thai. Maybe I can make it a little.
Oh, Kumsai can send you the Thai translation.
Because that one is not completely. We need to do the audit. You have to do edit.
Yeah, the Google translation or the app translation is not perfect.
That's why we would like Ajahn send the original one, and not that as long as this one, then we can if we translate it's a real one, so it's not.
Yeah, Ajahn Kumsai send all to me, and then when I read it, and sometimes that is not the same thing like English, kind of off. But anyway, I can use that one. Okay, I can use that one to be a little bit like my key to get it from there.
We have to talk to Nathan.
You want chapter 14, right?
Yes, please. Ajahn,
Translation. I haven't done that yet.
I can do that too, but but since you do it, okay, you send it to me, all right?
Okay.
Soว่าความเว้ยเบื่อผู้ชายลูกกงกัน
เอาไว้น่าจะการพิเศษสมัยก้องแล้วเยอะด้วยอยู่ไม่โอเค
ไปต้อง